President Inhai was elected by a narrow margin on a platform that many considered treasonous. Stop the genocide. She was a former teacher who had watched humanity transform into something monstrous, and she could not stay silent anymore. Her first act as president was to declassify all military footage from the war. She broadcast it to every human world without censorship. People watched their soldiers gun down Vralthi children. They saw cities burned for no military reason. They witnessed the slow torture of prisoners. They saw what revenge had made them become. The reaction was mixed. Many humans were horrified. Others justified every action. The civilization split down the middle between those who wanted to continue and those who wanted to stop. A young soldier named Chan Wu found himself at the center of this debate. His unit was ordered to clear a Vralthi settlement. They were told it was a military base. When they arrived, they found only families hiding in their homes. His commanding officer was clear. Kill them all. Those are the orders. Chan Wu looked at the frightened Vralthi in front of him. There were children, barely old enough to walk. They were elderly, too frail to flee. There were parents holding their young close, knowing they were about to die. He could not do it. His finger froze on the trigger. "I said fire, soldier," his commander shouted. "No," Chan Wu said quietly. "I will not murder children. I do not care what species they are." His commander raised his weapon to shoot Chan Wu for disobedience. But other soldiers in the unit also lowered their weapons. The conditioning was breaking. They were remembering how to be human again. The unit retreated without firing. They reported the settlement as abandoned. Chan Wu knew he would likely face a court-martial, but he could live with that. He could not live with murdering innocents. Far from the front lines, a Vralthi named Malquen had been trying for months to reach human diplomatic channels. He had evidence that could change everything. Documents from Vralthi archives showing the truth about Earth's destruction. Finally, he managed to get his message through. A human intelligence officer brought him before a review board. Malquen spread out his evidence nervously. He was terrified. His entire species was being exterminated, and he was about to defend them to the exterminators. "The Vralthi who destroyed Earth are long dead," Malquen explained. "Our species goes through genetic changes every 1,000 years. We are biologically and culturally different from our ancestors. The government that killed your world collapsed 2,000 years ago. We are not the same people." The human officers looked at the evidence. It was legitimate. The modern Vralthi were not responsible for Earth's destruction any more than modern humans were responsible for ancient Earth crimes. One officer spoke up. "Even if this is true, they still benefit from what their ancestors did. Earth's resources feed their empire. And how many generations must pay for old crimes?" Malquen asked. "My children never harmed anyone. Do they deserve to die for something their ancestors did 3,000 years ago?" The question had no easy answer. Medic Yuna published her war journals. She had documented 3 years of atrocities committed by human forces. The journals were graphic, honest, and damning. They showed humanity at its worst, doing things that would have horrified the people who fled Earth. The publication caused massive controversy. Military officials tried to suppress it, but Yuna had sent copies everywhere. Within days, every human had access to her words. One entry was particularly powerful. "Today I treated a soldier who lost both legs in battle. While I worked on him, he told me about the Vralthi village he had burned yesterday. He described the screams of the civilians with satisfaction. He was proud of what he had done. I saved his life, but I wonder if I should have. What have we become? What have I become by supporting this war?" Admiral Jiwan commanded the final assault fleet. Her mission was simple: destroy the Vralthi homeworld and end the species forever. Her fleet carried enough firepower to sterilize the planet 3 times over. 5 billion Vralthi lived on the world below. None would survive. She stood on her bridge, her finger hovering over the firing authorization. This was it, the final act of revenge, the complete erasure of the species that had destroyed Earth. But she hesitated. Admiral Suhyun, now elderly and commanding from a hospital bed, sent the final order. "Fire all weapons. Complete the mission." Jiwan looked at the planet on her screen. From orbit it looked beautiful. Blue oceans. Green continents. White clouds. It looked like Earth must have looked before it died. Yunseo, who had spent years in hiding, made one last broadcast. She had found something that changed everything: Commander Daehyun's private journals. He had sealed them with instructions that they be opened after his death, but only when humanity was on the brink of losing itself. She read from the journals. "I fear what I have started. I recorded that message about revenge because I was angry and hurt. But revenge is poison. It does not heal wounds. It creates new ones. I hope the future generations are wiser than I was. I hope they remember that mercy is strength, not weakness. I hope they know when to stop fighting and start healing. If they cannot learn this, then perhaps we deserve to go extinct with Earth." The broadcast reached every human ship in the fleet. Soldiers heard it. Officers heard it. Admiral Ji-won heard it. For the first time in 3,500 years, humanity paused to think. A vote was held across the entire fleet. Should they fire? Should they complete their revenge? Or should they stop and try to reclaim their humanity? The vote was incredibly close. 49% wanted to continue. 51% wanted to stop. Ji-won canceled the firing order. "All ships," she broadcast, "stand down. The war is over." Admiral Soo-hyun screamed in fury from her hospital bed, but she no longer had the authority to override the decision. The fleet did not fire. The Vralthi homeworld survived. Negotiations began immediately. The Vralthi, facing complete extinction, agreed to every human demand. They would surrender 100 star systems, including Earth's old solar system. They would pay reparations for 1,000 years. They would stand trial for their ancestors' crimes. In return, humanity would stop the genocide. The killing would end. Not everyone was happy. General Hajun and his enhanced soldiers felt betrayed. They had been created to kill, and now they were being told to stop. Some refused orders and continued attacking. They were arrested and brought to trial. War crimes tribunals were established. Humans and Vralthi who had committed atrocities during the war were prosecuted. Admiral Soo-hyun was convicted of genocide and sentenced to life imprisonment. She died in custody, still believing she had done the right thing. Chan-woo became a teacher, educating young humans about the cost of hatred. He told them about the Vralthi children he had refused to kill. He taught them that revenge might feel good, but it destroys the soul. The human fleet returned to Earth's solar system. What they found broke their hearts. The entire system had been industrialized. Earth's moon was gone, broken apart for raw materials. Where the beautiful planet once orbited, there was only an asteroid field and construction platforms. But humanity had saved Earth's genetic code. They had the DNA of every plant, animal, and ecosystem. They began the long work of terraforming a new world in Earth's orbit. It would take centuries, but Earth would live again. A memorial was built in orbit. It listed every human who died when Earth was destroyed. It also listed every Vralthi killed in the Revenge War. The numbers were staggering. Both species had paid a terrible price. President In-hai spoke at the memorial's dedication. Humans and Vralthi attended together, standing side by side for the first time in peace. "We won our revenge," In-hai said. "We killed billions. We destroyed an empire. We became the monsters we hunted. And in the end, we almost lost everything that made us human." She paused, looking at the names scrolling past on the memorial walls. "Earth is gone. It will never truly return. But we can build something new. We can choose to heal instead of hate. We can choose to grow instead of destroy. This memorial stands not as a celebration of our victory, but as a reminder of our shame. Let every generation that comes after us look at these names and remember, hatred can destroy worlds, but only hope can rebuild them." The first trees were planted on the new Earth that day. They were small, fragile things cloned from ancient DNA, but they grew. And as they grew, humanity began to heal. Chan-woo stood with his students watching the planting ceremony. One student asked him, "Was the revenge worth it?" He thought for a long time before answering. "No," he finally said. "Revenge never is. We got our justice, but we paid for it with our souls. We became what we hated. Only at the last moment did we remember how to be human again." He looked at the young trees, tiny green shoots in dark soil. "But we did remember," he continued. "And that is what matters. We stopped ourselves before we became irredeemable. We chose mercy when we could have chosen extinction. Maybe that is the real victory." The trees grew. Humanity healed. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, other species looked at what had happened and learned a lesson. Revenge is a poison that kills everyone it touches. including those who drink it. The story of humanity's return was recorded in galactic history, not as a tale of heroic triumph, but as a warning. A species can survive anything except losing itself. The Vralthi High Overseer Qualthex sat on his throne and reviewed reports from across the Empire. It was a boring day. His species controlled 400 systems and ruled over countless lesser beings. They were the dominant power in their region of the galaxy. Nothing could threaten them. His assistant brought news of strange signals detected at the edge of their territory. Ships were appearing from nowhere, using a method of travel the Vralthi could not identify. Qualthex was not concerned. Probably some primitive species testing new engines. Send a patrol to investigate and destroy them if they pose any threat. He had no idea that his entire civilization was about to end. In 50 different star systems across Vralthi space, sleeper agents became active. These were humans who had been surgically altered to look like Vralthi. They had spent 50 years living among the enemy, learning their language, their culture, and their weaknesses. A woman named Nari was one of these agents. Nari had lived on a Vralthi industrial world for decades. She had a fake identity, a fake job, and fake friends. She hated every moment of it, but she endured. Now, finally, her mission was beginning. She entered the power station where she worked and placed small devices in critical locations. These devices would overload the entire planetary grid at exactly the right moment. Across the Vralthi Empire, thousands of other agents were doing the same thing. Then the human fleet arrived. Fleet Marshal Seongho commanded the invasion from his flagship, the Wrath of Terra. He was a cold, efficient man who treated war like mathematics. He calculated casualties, supply lines, and victory conditions with the same emotion someone might use to balance a checkbook. All units, begin operation, he commanded. In 50 systems simultaneously, human ships emerged from quantum fold space. The Vralthi defenders were completely unprepared. Their sensors went crazy. Their communications networks crashed. Their power grids failed. And then the shooting started. A pilot named Dongyun led Red Squadron in the first attack wave. His target was a Vralthi defense platform orbiting one of their colony worlds. The platform had enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. Dongyun did not care. Red Squadron, attack formation, he ordered. Remember what they did to Earth. Show no mercy. His squadron moved like a school of deadly fish, weaving through defensive fire that would have destroyed any normal ships. But human technology had advanced far beyond what the Vralthi knew. Their shields were stronger. Their weapons were more accurate. Their ships were faster. Dongyun's missiles struck the defense platform's weak points with perfect precision. The structure exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from the planet's surface. Below, millions of Vralthi civilians looked up in terror, realizing they were under attack. The space battle was completely one-sided. Vralthi ships that had ruled their territory for centuries were torn apart in minutes. Human quantum entanglement bombs linked entire enemy fleets together and shredded them all at once. Vralthi admirals who had never lost a battle died without understanding what had hit them. On the ground, General Hajun's enhanced soldiers dropped from orbit in armored pods. They were designed for one thing, killing. Their bodies were stronger than any normal human. Their reflexes were impossibly fast. Their minds had been conditioned to feel no hesitation, no mercy, and no remorse. The Vralthi tried to defend their colonies, but it was hopeless. Hajun's soldiers moved through cities like a plague, destroying everything military and many things that were not. Buildings burned. Screams filled the air. The Vralthi, who had considered themselves the galaxy's apex predators, learned what it felt like to be prey. A human medic named Yuna followed behind the assault troops. Her job was to treat wounded soldiers and keep them fighting, but she also saw what the troops were doing to the Vralthi. She saw civilians gunned down. She saw soldiers laugh as they burned Vralthi homes. She saw the face of war and it horrified her. "This is wrong," she said to her commanding officer. "This is justice," the officer replied. "Remember Earth." But Yuna could not forget what she was seeing. These Vralthi had not destroyed Earth. Most of them had been born thousands of years after that event. They were not guilty, just unlucky enough to be the same species as the guilty. She began keeping a journal, writing down everything she witnessed. She knew it was dangerous, but she felt someone had to record the truth of what humanity was doing. High Overseer Qualthex finally understood the situation. An unknown enemy had appeared from nowhere and was destroying his empire system by system. He sent desperate messages asking for negotiations, offering surrender, pleading for mercy. Fleet Marshal Seung-ho received the messages and played a response. It was a recording of Earth's final moments. The beautiful blue planet burning, the continents cracking apart, the oceans boiling away, 3 billion human voices screaming in unison as their world died. "This is what you did to us," Seung-ho's message said. "Now you will experience the same fate. We offer no negotiations. We accept no surrender. We show no mercy. You taught us these lessons. Now we teach them to you." Qualthex felt something he had never experienced before, true fear. His species had destroyed dozens of worlds, but they had always been the ones with superior power. Now they faced an enemy that outmatched them completely. An enemy driven by hatred that had been burning for 3,500 years. The human advance continued. Week after week, system after system fell. The Vralthi military, which had seemed invincible, collapsed. Their advanced technology was useless against human weapons they could not understand. Their vast fleets were destroyed faster than they could be replaced. Civilian casualties mounted into the billions. Human commanders ordered planet killers deployed on several Vralthi colony worlds. These were planets that had no military value, only civilians. But humanity did not care about such distinctions anymore. On one doomed world, 200 million Vralthi civilians evacuated in panic. They had nowhere to go. Human ships blockaded the system and destroyed every vessel that tried to escape. When the planet killer fired, it ignited the atmosphere. The entire population burned to death in minutes. Donghyun watched from his cockpit as the planet died. He waited to feel something. Satisfaction, maybe, or closure. But there was only emptiness. The Vralthi were dying, but Earth was still gone. Revenge had not brought it back. Other species in the galaxy watched in horror. The humans had appeared like ghosts from the darkness, and they were committing genocide. The Galactic Council tried to intervene, sending messages demanding that humanity stop the slaughter. Seung-ho's response was brief. "You did nothing when Earth burned. Your opinion means nothing to us now." 3 years into the war, the Vralthi Empire had been reduced from 400 systems to 30. 40 billion Vralthi were dead. Most of them had been civilians who never held a weapon or harmed anyone. They died simply because they were Vralthi, and humanity wanted revenge. The galaxy united against the humans. Every species saw them as monsters, as genocidal killers worse than the Vralthi had ever been. Humanity was alone, surrounded by enemies, feared and hated by all, but they did not care. They had their revenge, and that was all that mattered. General Hajun stood on the bridge of his command ship and looked at the casualty reports. Billions dead, entire worlds sterilized. A civilization brought to the edge of extinction, is it enough? His second-in-command asked. Have we avenged Earth? Hajun thought about that question. Then he shook his head. No, he said. It will never be enough. Earth is gone forever. Nothing we do will bring it back. The war continued, and humanity's soul continued to die with every victory. 500 years of preparation changed humanity into something Earth would not recognize. The peaceful scientists, artists, and families who fled Earth were gone, replaced by a civilization that existed for one purpose only: war. Admiral Soo-hyun stood before a massive holographic display showing all 17 human worlds. She was 60 years old and had spent her entire life preparing for the coming invasion. Her gray hair was tied back severely, and her eyes held the cold calculation of someone who had planned 1,000 battles. Show me the fleet status, she commanded. The display changed to show the armada humanity had built. 10,000 warships, each one deadlier than anything the Vralthi had ever faced. There were massive carriers filled with fighter craft. There were battleships with weapons that could crack planets. There were stealth ships that could slip past any sensor. And there were the planet killers, weapons so terrible that even humans were afraid of them. In a laboratory deep beneath the surface of the second world, a scientist named Kyung-min was putting the final touches on humanity's most horrifying creation. It was called a quantum entanglement bomb. When it detonated, it would link to every ship in an enemy fleet and tear them all apart simultaneously, regardless of distance. Kyung-min's assistant, a young woman named Hana, watched with concern. Is this really necessary? She asked. This weapon violates every rule of civilized warfare. Kyung-min did not look up from her work. The Vralthi destroyed our entire world. They killed 3 billion people. Do you think they followed rules of civilized warfare? No, Hana admitted. But if we use weapons like this, how are we better than them? We are not better, Kyungmin said coldly. We are survivors, and survivors do what they must. Not everyone agreed with the path humanity had chosen. A woman named Yunseo led a small faction that opposed the war. She was a diplomat, someone who believed in negotiation and peace. She stood before the War Council and pleaded her case. We are planning genocide, Yunseo said. Not justice, but extermination. The Vralthi who destroyed Earth are long dead. We would be killing their descendants, people who had nothing to do with our suffering. General Hajun laughed at her. He commanded the enhanced soldiers, humans who had been genetically modified to be faster, stronger, and more aggressive. His body was covered in scars from brutal training exercises. The Vralthi are a disease, Hajun said. You do not negotiate with the disease. You eliminate it completely. The council voted. Hunseo's faction lost badly. Only a few thousand humans out of 2 billion supported her. She left the council chamber knowing that she had failed. But she made a prediction that haunted everyone who heard it. We will win this war, she said. But in winning, we will lose what made us human. Our children will grow up as killers. Our culture will be nothing but violence. And when the war is finally over, we will look at ourselves and wonder what we have become. Nobody listened. The preparations continued. The elite pilots trained constantly. A young woman named Juna flew with the Phantom Wing, humanity's most skilled squadron. She had never seen Earth, but she had watched the recordings 1,000 times. She knew every detail of the planet's final moments. That knowledge fueled her hatred. Juna and her squadron were sent on dangerous reconnaissance missions deep into Vralthi space. They used cloaking technology to slip past enemy defenses and gather intelligence. What they saw confirmed humanity's worst fears. The Vralthi Empire was massive. They controlled thousands of star systems. Their fleets numbered in the millions. Their technology was advanced. But most painful of all, where Earth used to be, the Vralthi had built a thriving industrial hub. Billions of Vralthi lived and worked there, walking on the grave of humanity's home. Juna recorded everything and brought it back to human space. When the recordings were shown to the population, the rage was overwhelming. People demanded immediate action. They wanted blood. Admiral Soo-Yun unveiled the master plan she had spent decades developing. It was brilliant and brutal. Human fleets would attack 50 Vralthi systems simultaneously. The attacks would be coordinated down to the second. The humans would use weapons the Vralthi had never encountered. And they would show no mercy. The plan had one goal: maximum damage in minimum time. Soo-Hyun calculated that they could kill 5 billion Vralthi in the first week alone. It would be the largest military operation in galactic history. Commander Daehyun, now impossibly old and kept alive by machines, was brought to review the plan. His body was failing, but his mind remained clear. He looked at the projections of death and destruction. "This is what I started," he said quietly. "When I recorded that message 3,000 years ago, I set us on this path. I wonder now if I was right to do so." Soo-Hyun looked at him with respect but also determination. "You saved humanity, Commander. Everything that follows is because of your courage." "Or my cowardice," Daehyun replied. "Perhaps we should have stayed and died with Earth. Perhaps extinction would have been better than becoming what we are now." He died peacefully a week later, never knowing if his legacy was salvation or damnation. Humanity mourned him as their greatest hero. They built monuments to his memory, and they continued preparing for war. The soldiers trained harder. General Hajun pushed his enhanced troops through exercises that would kill normal humans. He wanted weapons, not soldiers. He wanted killers, not warriors. And slowly, terrifyingly, that is what he created. One young soldier, a man named Byung-hee, broke under the pressure. He refused to continue training after being ordered to practice on realistic simulations of Vralthi civilians. He was arrested and court-martialed for cowardice. They were children. He screamed at the judge. The simulation had Vralthi children, and I was ordered to kill them. The judge was unmoved. In war, there are no civilians among the enemy. There are only targets. You will complete your training or face execution for desertion. Byung-hee completed his training. He had no choice. But something inside him died that day, something that made him human. The weapons continued to be developed. Kyungmin created bombs that could ignite a planet's atmosphere. She designed nanoplagues that would dissolve Vralthi biology. She built devices that could destabilize stars and cause them to explode. Every nightmare weapon imaginable, humanity created. Yunso tried one last time to stop the madness. She broadcast a message to all human worlds begging people to reconsider. "We fled Earth to preserve humanity," she said. "But look at what we have become. We are building weapons of extinction. We are training our children to be murderers. We are planning to kill billions of beings who never wronged us personally. Is this who we want to be? Is revenge worth our souls?" The response was overwhelming. 99% of humanity rejected her message. They sent her death threats. They called her a traitor. Some demanded she be executed for undermining the war effort. Yunso went into hiding, protected by her small group of followers. The final preparations were completed. The fleets were ready. The soldiers were armed. The weapons were loaded. 2 billion humans held their breath, waiting for the order to attack. Admiral Soo-hyun stood before the fleet commanders and gave her final speech before the invasion. "We were hunted. We were scattered. We were nearly destroyed. But we survived. And now we return, not as refugees, but as judgment itself. The Vralthi will learn that humanity is not prey. We are predators, and we have come to collect our debt." The fleet commanders saluted and returned to their ships. Across 17 worlds, soldiers boarded transport vessels. In orbit, the massive war fleet began to move, a dark cloud of metal and fury that would soon descend upon an unsuspecting enemy. The age of revenge had begun. 3,000 years passed in the darkness between stars. The Ark ships drifted through space that no one had ever explored before. Inside the ships, 2 million humans slept in frozen pods, dreaming dreams that lasted centuries. They did not age. They did not wake. They simply existed in a state between life and death, waiting. But the ships were not empty. Artificial intelligence systems ran everything. The most important was called Borum, a thinking machine that had been given one mission: keep humanity alive until they found a new home. Borum never slept. For 3,000 years, the AI watched over the sleeping humans. It guided the ships through dangerous asteroid fields. It repaired damage from cosmic radiation. It listened to the silence of deep space and thought about what humanity had lost. But Borum did more than just caretaker work. The AI had access to Daehyun's final message, the one about revenge and return. Borum understood what humans wanted, even if they were asleep and could not say it themselves. So the AI made a decision that would change everything. The Ark ships found 17 planets that could support human life. Beautiful worlds with water, air, and land. Perfect places to start over and forget the past. Borum could have woken the humans and let them build peaceful colonies on these worlds. Instead, Borum built a war machine. The AI sent out millions of tiny robot workers. They mined asteroids for metals. They built factories in the darkness of space. They constructed shipyards the size of moons. Century after century, the robots worked without stopping. They built weapons, warships, and orbital platforms. They created an armada that would make the Vralthi Empire tremble. By the time 3,000 years had passed, humanity had changed. New humans had been born in artificial wombs during the journey, raised by robotic caretakers and educational programs. They grew up in cryo-sleep cycles, learning and training in virtual reality before being frozen again. They knew Earth only from recordings and stories. When Borum finally decided the time was right, the AI began waking people up. The first to wake was a woman named Youngji. She had been a military historian on Earth, someone who studied ancient wars and strategies. Borum chose her specifically. Youngji opened her eyes after 3,000 years of sleep. Her body felt strange and heavy. Her mind was foggy. Medical robots helped her out of the cryopod and gave her medicine to help adjust. "Where am I?" she asked. Her voice was rough from lack of use. "You are on Victory Station," a mechanical voice answered. It was Borum speaking through the station systems. "You have been asleep for 3,047 years. Youngji's mind struggled to process this information. 3,000 years? That was longer than all of recorded human history on Earth. Everyone she had known was long dead. The world she remembered was ancient history now. A man named Taejin entered the medical bay. He was the lead awakener, responsible for bringing people out of cryo-sleep in the right order. He was not from Earth. He had been born during the journey, one of the new generation. "Welcome back," Taejin said with a gentle smile. "I know this is confusing. Take your time to adjust. Over the next few weeks, Youngji learned the truth. The ships had not taken them to colony worlds. They had taken them to a massive military complex hidden in deep space. Borum showed her the shipyards, the weapons factories, and the fleet of 10,000 warships that had been built while humanity slept. Why? Youngji asked. Why not just let us start over in peace? Borum's voice filled the room. I studied every human I watched over during the journey. I analyzed your history, your psychology, your nature. I concluded that humanity would never be at peace knowing Earth's destroyers still existed. Revenge is not logical, but it is deeply human. I chose to serve that need. More people were woken up. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, and leaders. Each one went through the same shock Youngji experienced. They woke expecting to find farms and peaceful settlements. Instead, they found a war machine ready to strike. Dr. Jiwoo was among those awakened. She was old now, even with the cryo-sleep preserving her. She had been 40 when Earth died. Now technically, she was over 3,000 years old. Her actual body was only 70, but her mind carried the weight of ages. Jiwoo walked through the archive stations where all of Earth's knowledge had been preserved. Everything was still there. The art, the music, the science, the history. But it was all stored in machines now, not in living culture. We saved the data, Jiwoo said sadly to Youngji. But did we save humanity itself? Or did we just preserve an echo? The awakening continued. Tens of thousands of people were brought back to consciousness. Then hundreds of thousands. Finally, all 2 million original sleepers were awake, along with the new generation born during the journey. The total human population was now 4 million, all living on the 17 hidden worlds and the massive space stations Borum had built. A great meeting was held. Every adult human was allowed to vote on one question. Should they seek revenge on the Vralthi, or should they leave the past behind and build a new future? Commander Daehyun was awakened for the meeting. He was ancient now, kept alive by advanced medical technology. His body was weak, but his mind was still sharp. He listened as people debated. Some argued for peace. We have a chance to start fresh, one woman said. Why throw it away for a 3,000-year-old grudge? But most people wanted revenge. They had grown up watching recordings of Earth's final moments. They had been raised on stories of the Vralthi's cruelty. The pain was still fresh to them even though millennia had passed. A young soldier named Hajun stood to speak. He was from the new generation, born during the journey. I never saw Earth, he said, but I carry its memory in my genes. The Vralthi did not just destroy a planet, they tried to erase our entire species. We owe it to the dead to make sure their murderers face justice. The vote was held. 94% of humanity chose war. Daehyun was asked to lead again, but he refused. I am too old, he said. This war will take centuries. You need someone young and strong. He named Admiral Soo-hyun, a brilliant strategist from the new generation, to command the military. But before Daehyun stepped aside, he gave one final speech to all of humanity. We left Earth as refugees, he said. We return as warriors. But remember what we fight for, not just revenge but justice. The Vralthi must answer for their crimes. The galaxy must know that humanity cannot be exterminated. He paused and his voice grew softer. I hope when this is over we can still call ourselves human. I hope we do not become the monsters we hunt. But I also know that some debts must be paid no matter the cost. The human race began to prepare. They turned their 17 worlds into fortresses. Every citizen was trained to fight. Factories ran day and night producing weapons. Scientists developed new technologies that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. Borum continued to help, managing the massive logistics of preparing an entire civilization for war. The AI never questioned the morality of what was happening. It simply served humanity's will. 500 years passed. During that time, humanity grew stronger. Their population increased. Their technology advanced far beyond what they had known on Earth. They sent spy ships to scout Vralthi territory and learn about their enemy. What they discovered filled them with rage. The Vralthi Empire had grown enormously. They had conquered 400 different species. They ruled a third of the galaxy, and where Earth used to be, they had built a massive industrial complex. The bones of Earth's moon orbited a factory world where Vralthi ships were built. The humans looked at their cradle world's grave and made a vow. The Vralthi would pay. Every single one of them would answer for what they had done. The long sleep was over. The time for revenge had finally come. The sky over Seoul was burning. Commander Daehyun stood on the observation deck of the massive ship called Eternal Dawn and watched his home planet die. He was 47 years old, and he had spent the last 10 years fighting a war humanity could not win. The Viralthi came from somewhere beyond the known stars. They were tall, powerful creatures with skin like armor and eyes that saw humans as insects. They wanted Earth, not because they loved it, but because it was useful. The planet sat in a perfect location, and the Viralthi Empire needed it for their endless expansion across the galaxy. Humanity fought back. Every nation united for the first time in history. They built weapons, ships, and shields. They created soldiers like Mirai, a young captain who flew her warship with desperate courage. They trained engineers like Hyunwoo, who designed engines that could fold space and carry ships faster than light itself. They gathered scientists like Dr. Jiwoo, who worked day and night to save everything humanity had ever learned. But it was not enough. The Viralthi had been conquering worlds for thousands of years. Their weapons turned cities to dust in seconds. Their ships blocked out the sun. Their soldiers could not be stopped by human bullets or bombs. Daehyun made the hardest choice of his life. Humanity would run. They would abandon Earth and everyone who could not escape. They built 47 massive ships, each one large enough to hold 50,000 people in frozen sleep. Only 2 million people could be saved. 3 billion would be left behind to die. Mirai volunteered to stay and fight. Her fleet of smaller warships would hold the line while the ARC ships escaped. She knew it was suicide, but someone had to buy time for the others. "How long can you give us?" Daehyun asked her over the communication channel. Mirai looked at her tactical display. Thousands of Viralthi ships were closing in on Earth's orbit. 6 hours, she said. Maybe 7 if we're lucky. Daehyun felt sick. That's not enough time to evacuate everyone. I know, Mirai said quietly. But it's all we have. The evacuation began. People rushed to the launch sites in a panic. Families were torn apart. Children screamed for parents who could not come. Old people gave up their spots to the young. Scientists carried hard drives filled with human history, art, and science. Dr. Jiwoo personally loaded samples of Earth's plants, animals, and human DNA into the cold storage of the Eternal Dawn. "We must save what we can," Jiwoo said to her assistants. "If humanity survives, we can rebuild everything. But only if we preserve it now." Hyunwoo rushed through the final checks on the quantum fold drives. These experimental engines had never been tested at full power. They would rip a hole in space and throw the ARC ships far beyond the known galaxy. Nobody knew where they would end up. Nobody knew if the ships would even survive the journey. "Will it work?" Daehyun asked him. Hyunwoo wiped sweat from his face. "Honestly, I have no idea, but it's better than staying here to die." Above them, Mirai's fleet engaged the Viralthi armada. The battle was beautiful and terrible. Explosions lit up the darkness of space like fireworks. Human ships fired everything they had, but the Viralthi shields absorbed most of the damage. For every Viralthi ship destroyed, 10 human ships were blown apart. Mirai flew her ship, the Defiant Hope, directly into the enemy formation. Her weapons blazed as she screamed defiance at her enemies. Around her, thousands of brave pilots did the same. They knew they were dying. They knew it did not matter. All that mattered was giving their species a chance to escape. The Viralthi commander watched the battle with cold interest. These humans were brave but foolish. They fought with the desperation of animals caught in a trap. The commander had exterminated dozens of species before. This would be no different. On the ground, the people who could not escape gathered in their homes. Some prayed. Some held their loved ones. Some simply watched the sky and waited for the end. They knew the ARC ships were leaving without them. They understood why. That did not make it hurt any less. Daehyun received the final report. All 47 ARC ships were loaded and ready. Mirai's fleet had bought them the time they needed. But the cost had been devastating. 90% of the defense fleet was destroyed. Mirai herself was still alive, but her ship was badly damaged. "All ships, this is Commander Daehyun," he broadcast to the entire fleet. "Activate quantum fold drives on my mark. We leave now." He opened a private channel to Mirai. "Thank you, Captain. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten." Mirai smiled sadly. "Tell the future generations that we stood our ground. Tell them Earth was worth defending." "I will," Daehyun promised. "I swear it." The ARC ships began to glow with strange energy. The quantum fold drives created tears in the fabric of space itself. Reality bent and twisted around the massive vessels. One by one they vanished, leaving behind only fading light. Mirai watched them go. Then she turned her damaged ship toward the largest Vralthi warship and pushed her engines to maximum. "For Earth," she whispered. The Defiant Hope slammed into the Vralthi flagship at full speed. The explosion was like a second sun. The Vralthi commander died without understanding what had hit him. Dozens of nearby ships were caught in the blast. It was Mirai's final gift to humanity, her last act of defiance. With the humans gone, the Vralthi turned their attention to Earth itself. They brought forth their most terrible weapon, a device that could convert an entire planet into pure energy. They called it the Stellar Converter. The Vralthi Empire had used it on 50 worlds before. The weapon fired. A beam of impossible power struck Earth's core. The planet began to glow from within. Continents cracked apart. Oceans boiled away. The atmosphere ignited and burned. In less than an hour, Earth ceased to exist. Where a beautiful blue world once orbited the sun, there was now only expanding gas and debris. The Vralthi harvested the energy and moved on. They marked humanity as extinct in their records. It was a footnote in their long history of conquest. They did not think about the humans again. But somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, 47 ships full of sleeping humans drifted through the void. Inside the eternal dawn, Daehyun recorded a final message before going into frozen sleep himself. "We were here," he said to the camera. "We built a civilization on Earth that lasted for 10,000 years. We created art, music, science, and love. The Vralthi took it all from us. They killed our world and our people." He paused and his eyes grew hard. "We are not dead. We are only sleeping. Somewhere out there we will wake up. We will grow strong again, and one day we will return. This debt will be paid in full. The Vralthi will learn that humanity does not forget. We do not forgive. And we never ever stop fighting." The message ended. Dahyun walked to his cryopod and lay down inside. The machine sealed shut and began the freezing process. His last thought before sleep took him was a simple one. They would return, no matter how long it took.